It's all just transphobia. The only thing that aligns any of what they're saying together is transphobia.
I deserve smarter haters. I really, really do. A woke YouTuber makes an insane hate video about me and Sydney Watson, a CNN reporter gets owned on TV, a wild suggestion from Trump when it comes to credit card rates, and a TikToker wants us all to still be wearing masks. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet and across our politics, all from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, and regardless, do hit that like button and do comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Plus, if you leave your comment with a super chat or a super thanks, I'll definitely respond to it in the next show. And now we've got to react to one of the wildest hate videos I've seen about me in some time. In this case, it comes from a YouTuber and streamer named Alec Gunter, who is clearly very far left and is a big pro-trans activist, and he decided to respond to an episode of this show that I did with my friend Sydney Watson a few weeks ago, where we talked about the Tickle vs. Giggle case in Australia. If you remember, that was the case where there was a female entrepreneur who started an app that was for women to meet and connect with other women, and she made it a female-only space and did not allow trans women, who are, of course, biologically male. She was then sued by Roxanne Tickle, a trans woman, and the judge recently ruled in Roxanne Tickle's favor, even declaring that sex can be changed in this ruling. Sydney and I criticized this for its bizarre view on the mutability of sex, and we argued that we should be able to have spaces and concepts in society that are still segregated by biological sex, not self-perceived gender identity. Well, Alec Gunter didn't take kindly to our perspective and decided to make a video called Transphobes Are Seething Over Landmark Discrimination Case, featuring me and Sydney in the thumbnail. I'm always open to criticism. I'm always open to the idea that maybe I've gotten something wrong, so I watched his full video with an open mind. But frankly, I wasn't very impressed by his attempts to refute our counter-arguments because a lot of it ended up being ad hominem or also seemed to illustrate kind of a lack of familiarity with some of the things we were talking about. So we're going to go through some highlights. First, a couple notes. This guy I'm showing you is not Tim Pool. He does look like Tim Pool, the right-wing YouTuber, but he's actually not. At first, I was very confused. Second, I'm actually wearing the same shirt in this episode today that I did in the episode he's reacting to, which might be a little confusing, but it's just a total coincidence. I had already picked out this shirt. So what you're seeing are clips of him live streaming our episode and discussing it. And then I'll bring us back here and we'll talk about it. Up first, here's his commentary on my appearance. I take on the
there's something up.
Craziest ideas from
not going to
across
comment
the
on his
internet and
looks.
across our politics, all from a center-right, independent
I'm trying to be better
perspective.
about that.
If you're new, merch that I just
Why does he look like that? I'm telling you, there's something about like evil people. There is something. It's very intense. Yes, thank you. It is very intense.
dropped, your math isn't mathing, your Delulu is showing,
Clearly
and
been
more
mewing.
at the link.
Whoever carved this dude's face forgot to sand down the edges. Stop, you heathens!
Woman who
How
took to
dare you
courts
take the
to try to
low-hanging
force their
fruit.
way onto a. So I did find it funny how he was like, "I'm not going to insult his looks," then went on to talk about my looks, but it didn't really bother me because I'm not insecure about how I look, and I just always take it as a sign that somebody doesn't have much of substance to say when they're criticizing my appearance. And also, he's calling me evil, and guys, this was at the start of the video. He hadn't even watched my video yet, so he was supposedly live reacting to this and hadn't seen it, and he's calling me evil before he's even heard anything I had to say. To me, that did demonstrate a pretty remarkable close-mindedness, but might be onto something with that one. Now, here's a clip where he talks about his take on the case, and I just want to show you this because to me it did illustrate a real lack of familiarity with the actual case we were discussing.
This the transphobes lost their little dating app, right? Because it was transphobic as shit. Yeah, go f yourself.
Female. Giggle's legal team considered sex to mean the sex of a person at birth. Today, a judge said those arguments were contrary to 30 years of precedent.
Let's go!
Those cases established that in its ordinary meaning, sex is changeable.
Unfortunately, it is
True.
the
So a couple of things here. One, Giggle wasn't a dating app. And that might sound like a minor detail, but it's actually kind of important. It was an app meant for friendships and community and meeting people, but it was not a dating app. The women on there were not all or even predominantly lesbians seeking other women. And I know that might seem like a small detail, but if you don't even understand the core concept of what these people were trying to create, I don't really understand how you can judge them and think it's wrong and then celebrate their inability to do so. And two, it's just strange to see somebody suggest that they agree with the notion that biological sex can be changed. It cannot be. We can talk about gender identity, we can talk about expressing yourself differently, we can talk about how you walk through the world, but sex is defined by the shape of your gametes, whether you're oriented towards the production of sperm or egg. And nothing about that, it is completely dimorphic. There's only two, and nothing about that changes just because you change your outward appearance or your exterior. At the genetic level, there are hundreds of thousands of differences between males and females that, again, don't go away just from hormones or from surgical alterations. I just totally disagree that you can actually change biological sex. I don't understand how somebody can think that. I want to show you guys something else he said that really stuck with me and was actually a little bit haunting.
That's how discrimination spreads. That's how intolerance spreads. You cannot tolerate intolerance in a tolerant society. You can't do it. It spreads like a disease.
So this is a frightening thing to hear somebody who's supposed to be woke or progressive actually say. But the definition of a tolerant society is whether you tolerate different viewpoints and beliefs, even ones that others find controversial or offensive. Yes, you can tolerate intolerance in a tolerant society. In fact, that's what a tolerant society is defined by. Toleration for our differences, and our most important differences are our differences in perspective. This line of thinking is actually dangerous because it leads to the justification of suppressing people and oppressing people and harming people because of their perspective, because we can't tolerate intolerance. Well, newsflash, my friend, a lot of people probably find your views, your far left views, intolerant in some way or another. But I certainly still defend your right to say them and express them without being punished. But you're unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, and still doing it, undermining your own rights when you advocate this kind of thing. You also can't squash people with intolerant views out of existence. The more you try to punish them or force them into submission, the more they're going to resist. The more those ideas are going to fester. You don't convince people with a closed fist. You convince people, or if they're, say, bigoted or homophobic, by actually having them get to know people who are different from them and realize that a lot of their conceptions are false. So you reach out to people and change their minds with an open hand, not a closed fist. And that's a very frightening and scary approach to have to these issues. Next, this guy, Alec, said something very bizarre where, and it becomes even more bizarre later in his video, because it kind of comes back to haunt him, that he actually said this. He doesn't see any need for sex markers on government documents or identification. Take a listen.
So like we correlate. Okay, so there's zero reason at all for the government to know what your sex organs are. Zero. That is an arbitrary thing, an arbitrary letter that we put on a birth certificate and on legal documents. It's just arbitrary. There's no reason for it. Why do legal documents need to have my assigned sex on them? Why? Just take it off.
They need to have that information because, as verboten this might be to say in some woke circles now, I guess, biological sex is a meaningful dimension of human life. Males and females are fundamentally different in important ways, and we have to have separation of the sexes in things like sports and prisons to preserve basic fairness and safety. Having that kind of separation requires some distinction and ability to ascertain that distinction, which is why those documents exist and why sex is recorded at birth. Do people really not understand this basic reality anymore? But of course, if we dare disagree with the infinite wisdom of Alec Gunter, or have a different opinion about the need for some degree of sex separation in society today, we must just be bigots.
They do have a concept of how definitions change in different contexts, how the definitions of words change in different contexts. They have a concept of that, but they don't care because it's all just transphobia. It's all just transphobia. The only thing that aligns any of what they're saying together is transphobia. That explains all of their behavior and everything that they want.
So there was a time a few years ago where somebody would have called me transphobic and I would have left to say, no, I'm not transphobic. How dare you? I'm not. At this point, I don't really care. Call me whatever you want. That word means nothing at this point. I know in my heart I don't have hate for transgender people in any way. I just see common sense and meaningful distinctions that still need to be maintained. And I have a nuanced perspective on these issues, whereas you do not. And that's okay, but I'm not going to be swayed by this kind of just, screaming bigot at somebody. And I also think it's naive to think, the world is so simple that everyone who disagrees with you is just a mean, bad bigot who hates people. Yeah. You're just so infinitely wise, Alec, that you have the whole world figured out, including these complex debates and issues and societal concepts around gender and sex and sexuality. And you've got it all figured out, crystal clear. It's black and white. It's all cookie cutter morality. And the people that disagree with you couldn't possibly have any sort of good faith belief. They must all just be motivated by hate. The arrogance of that perspective, the complete dearth of intellectual humility, it's really quite remarkable, honestly. And I just can't relate to it at all. This guy actually went on to accuse me and Sydney of being perverts because we believe in basic sex separation in some concepts and some contexts.
But if you want to have a Boy Scouts that's just for Boy Scouts, go right on ahead and do that.
I disagree.
So that's number one. Number two is that when you have...
How are you going to verify that, right? How are you going to verify that? You going to do a dick check? Huh? You going to tell the Boy Scouts you're going to do a dick check? Is that what you're going to do? That's weird. That's disgusting. That's actually perverted.
Have legislators determining that women aren't entitled to those single
They're
spaces.
Perverts.
Well, that got weird very fast. And that's quite the accusation to make of somebody. No, we are not going to do any sort of genital inspections to just have something like Boy Scouts be segregated by sex. No, that's why documents need to have sex on them. That's why at birth, your sex needs to be observed and put on your birth certificate and then not changed because of your feelings. We have to have records of these things. It's so funny because like 10 minutes ago in this video, he was saying there's no need to have sex marked on documents. That's stupid. Give me one good reason why we need that. Here's your reason. So that then all we have to do is consult your documents, consult your medical record, your birth certificate, these kinds of things, and boom, we have an easy answer. But folks like you are the ones undermining that by pushing for people to be able to falsely put on documents that their sex has been changed, even though you can't change your sex. And then we don't have that basic thing to consult and actually have a reliable answer from. So I'm not saying we would do this, but the only possibility or realm where that would even be a conversation is one where we've undermined the basic record keeping that is supposed to solve for all of that. So great job. Maybe now you see the inconsistency in some of these arguments, dude? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe you're just too shut off from other ideas to even be open to seeing your own cognitive dissonance here. He also made some very specific claims about this issue that I do think are important to refute.
And there's no data that shows that trans women have the same crime statistics or proclivity for sexual misconduct as men do. There's no data to back that up. None.
So this is just not true. Research submitted to the UK Parliament says that males to females retained a male pattern regarding criminality, including for violent crime. It said that male to female transitioners were over 6 times more likely to be convicted of an offense than female comparators and 18 times more likely to be convicted of a violent offense. The group had no statistically significant differences from other natal males for convictions in general or for violent offending. Now, there may be other data suggesting otherwise or contesting this claim, and maybe there's a nuanced conversation to be had about what the research really show here, but to claim there's no data suggesting this sort of thing isn't correct. There is plenty of data showing exactly that. Now, in the next clip, he suggests that we don't actually care about these issues at all, and it's all just a mask for our bigotry, of course.
I don't care.
Yeah.
The ramifications of this,
We can do it now.
You end up with things like biological males in female
Phalloplasty,
prisons
thank you.
going on to forcibly impregnate people or women in the prison. It's like,
Okay, that's a problem with rape in prison, a problem that you don't actually care about because you're a disgusting piece of shit. You don't want to fix rape in prison. This is what transphobes do. They hide behind other issues like little pussies. You don't care about rape in prison. You never have, and you don't. Okay? You are a transphobe. Trans people do not commit at higher rates than other women in prisons. They don't. Okay? They don't do it. So I'm sorry. Like, this is a fake issue. If anything, they're way more dangerous. They're in a way more dangerous situation in a men's prison. Like, it's way more likely that a trans woman gets raped in a men's prison than it is that they go on to rape in a women's prison. The converse is way more likely. The inverse. So you don't care about rape in prison. You don't care if that trans person goes to a men's prison and then gets assaulted. You don't give a single solitary spare me the bullshit. You are disgusting. Absolutely
high-level
abhorrent.
sport and women
Abhorrent
having
pieces of
opportunities taken away from them by... So two things here. One, Alec must not have done any research about me because I've actually spoken out about the issue of rape in prisons for a long time. You can go back to 2019 and find me writing about an issue, this very issue, and saying that it's something that needs to be addressed because people who are sentenced to jail or prison aren't supposed to be sentenced to sexual assault. But that's the ugly reality of our prison system in many cases. So to say that I don't care about this issue generally is just not true. I have a track record of speaking about it many years ago. And secondly, this idea that we don't care about trans women being at risk for assault in prisons is also not true, at least for me, because if you look at my commentary on this, I've always had a nuanced position. I've always said that male transgender people should not be placed in women's prisons, traditional women's prisons, especially when they're in jail for a violent or sexual offense, but that it's also not necessarily safe to put them in a men's prison. So I've spoken with people like Blair White about the idea of a trans ward or some sort of separate facility for those people so they can be simultaneously safe while not putting others in danger. I have discussed the nuances of that, and I haven't discounted it or ever suggested that I don't care what happens to trans women in men's prisons. That's just not true. I have a lot of compassion for them the same way I would for anyone who's vulnerable for assault or abuse. And I certainly agree that in that context, they would be. I'm not going to make you sit through any more of this guy's video, but I just have to say once again, I really do feel that I deserve smarter haters. I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think I'm a genius. I don't think I have the whole world figured out. I'm sure there's flaws and holes in my commentary, but it just seems that, at least so far, the people who've tried to debunk me or destroy me or own me aren't very bright and just don't do a very good job at it. I welcome debate. I welcome challenge, but this wasn't much of a challenge at all. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it. And now we've got to talk about a wild moment that just aired on CNN when a reporter hostily questioned a Trump supporter and honestly got owned. It was really something to see. This CNN reporter went to a boat parade for Trump, and she interviewed a man there, and it didn't go the way she hoped. Let's take a look.
What's your most important issue?
The economy, getting the interest rates down, getting it to where we can afford to live in America. Right now, it's too expensive.
Okay, now let me maybe ask like a slightly impolite question. But, you know, if you can afford a boat, you're not hurting so bad, right? Because a boat costs a lot of money and it's a lot of upkeep.
Listen, nobody gave me shit. I earned everything that I've got. I'm retired military, retired power plant, and I am successful and retired and with boats, jet skis, because I did it right. And everybody has that chance. Whether they choose or not, that's up to them.
I would never try to take anything away from you in that way. But what I'm asking is, groceries are probably a smaller part of your budget than, say, you know, someone who's like a little worse off. I think it's interesting that people who are a little bit more comfortable are still so concerned about the economy. Did you see what I'm saying?
Because I want my money to go further. I want inflation to go down. I want interest rates to go back down. I want all that. But that covers everybody in the economy. Not just me, not just the poor, not just the rich. It covers everybody.
Now, something I've heard from some people, tell me if this applies to you, is like they're worried their kids aren't able to afford a house or a car.
Well, I trained my kids and taught my kids properly. They have great educations, and they're both successful in their careers. Actually, they're doing better than me.
Wow. Just wow. This CNN reporter got absolutely cooked. I mean, he ate. He went off. Like a based king. It was what we have right here. And if you can't see the visual, if you're listening on audio podcast, he's like shirtless. He's got a beer in his hand. The whole scene is just really, really poetic. It was funny to me to see how out of touch people at CNN can be, because the very premise of this question is not really right. It's not correct. She suggests that, well, if you own a boat, you must be wealthy. Well, as Zed Jelani pointed out on Twitter, that's not true. He quoted a source saying that more than 3 out of 4, 79%, of current boat owners have an average household income of less than $100,000. In fact, some people live on their boats and it's like their home and they don't have a house, or they just have a small boat that they sleep on in the summer. It doesn't mean they're fabulously wealthy and don't need to worry about the price of gas or groceries. But you know what? Even if you were wealthy, it would still make sense to care about the economy, because you still care about how far your dollar goes. You still care about the direction of the country. And like this guy mentioned, you still care about other people who are struggling in the economy. That's what's so funny here. It's like she can't imagine that he would be concerned about the economy, even if, let's say, he is personally financially comfortable. Like, why would you care then? Do you think he only cares about himself? Is that the caricature of Republicans that CNN brain has in mind? That, oh, well, Republicans are all just selfish rich people who only care about themselves. So I'm shocked to see somebody say they care about the economy, even if it's not going to affect them that much. That's what this is giving. And that's really a bad look. It really suggests that you're out of touch, because Republicans, lots of rank and file Republicans or Trump supporters are very generous people who care about their neighbors and care about others and donate to charity or volunteer. So it's kind of a gross stereotype to impose onto them, as this reporter seems to do. I will at least give CNN credit for actually speaking to Trump supporters and airing their views with seemingly at least not too much deceptive editing or anything like that. I do think that's important to do, because I do think it shows that they're not the demons that people who only watch CNN might otherwise think. And I think we all need to humanize each other and connect with each other and take time to listen to what the other side is saying. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And now we've got to talk about a new idea President Trump just floated about capping the interest rate that credit card companies can charge. Let's take a look.
And while working Americans catch up, we're going to put a temporary cap on credit card interest rates. We're going to cap it at around 10%. We can't let them make 25 and 30%.
So this might sound nice, it might sound good, but it's actually an incredibly economically illiterate idea that would have a lot of consequences for the people it's supposed to help. Of course, it's unfortunate that there are working class people struggling to get by who may be paying very high interest rates on their credit card debt. But manually capping the interest rate that credit card companies can charge and lowering it far beyond what they would otherwise charge is not going to help those people. It is going to price them out of credit availability entirely. There's a reason the rates are that high for those people in the first place. And if you force companies to offer it at a lower rate, well, if they think those people are at risk of defaulting, they're not going to offer them credit at that rate. So many people will just lose access to credit and be forced to go to payday lenders or shady under-the-table loan shark, and they'll end up facing much higher interest rates or even potential bad things happening in their lives. This is a classic example of government meddling in the economy and trying to control and set prices and meddle with things that always seems to backfire and cause all sorts of unintended consequences. We actually don't have to speculate about this, because some state governments have tried this approach. For example, in 2021, the state of Illinois tried instituting a cap on the interest rates for payday loans. Studies into this found exactly what you would expect. The number of loans to these borrowers decreased by 38%. So the people that needed these loans weren't able to get them. And a survey of borrowers found that many of them had their financial well-being worse off because of this policy. Meanwhile, well-off borrowers with better credit were able to get more loans. It really did backfire to hurt the people it was supposed to help, and there's every reason to believe that Trump's national policy would have a similar effect. Conservatives and Republicans are supposed to understand that government micromanaging of our economy does not work. But at least on some issues, Republicans seem to have turned in the other direction and just decided to pander to populist interests instead. I think that's a mistake, but you let me know what you think in the comments below. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slug slug.
Today, this TikToker is chastising us that we better wear a mask, even outside and even in 2024.
Please wear a mask. It's not that big an ask. Please wear a mask. I am literally begging you.
Let me think about it. No. I have sympathy for people with crippling levels of paranoia and fear, or people with rare autoimmune conditions or who are otherwise immunocompromised. I absolutely do. But I am not going to stop living my life. I'm not going to cover up my face and make myself have trouble breathing and not be able to see other people's expressions and deprive myself of a basic element of the human experience because of that. I'm not. And this person seems to be suggesting that people wear masks outside, as they are doing in this video. That is totally unscientific. COVID does not spread very much in outdoor open air environments. Even the experts that people like to cite, who have gotten a lot wrong on this issue, still didn't recommend mask wearing outdoors, even years ago while the pandemic was still going strong. People like this really do seem to have fallen victim to some sort of cult. Now, this individual put out a response video after getting a lot of feedback from people that, nope, we're not doing this. And that response video was quite something.
This video implies it. Unfortunately, due to health reasons, we have to make sacrifices. We can't cater to every need and disability. You see, that's where you're f***ing wrong, my guy! You're so f***ing wrong! Capitalism has taught you that we can't meet everybody's needs and we're not supposed to think about anybody but our f***ing selves, but we can make spaces accessible for every f***ing buddy. And in a couple of years, you're gonna see how disabling this event was, because all you assholes who don't wear masks and just keep getting that infection over and over and over are going to develop severe health conditions. This is a mass disabling event. And when you are disabled, you are going to wish that places would think about you. It's not that fucking hard. It really fucking isn't. And like, I'm no stranger to going viral and having just the worst of humanity in my fucking comments, but y'all are really showing out with how fucking idiotic your thought process is. Get outside of your fucking self, fucking remove yourself from this bullshit capitalism, hyper-individualism, where you don't give a shit about other fucking people. You don't give a shit about disabled fucking people, which is such a large part of the population. I don't know why you don't care about disabled people, but you really fucking should.
So, there's a lot here. There's a lot. I will say, I think this person deserves our sympathy, not our ridicule. This person is clearly not well on multiple levels, and I actually have compassion for them. I think they have been brainwashed and propagandized by fear porn and hysteria, and that's the only way one would end up in such an unreasonable and hysterical place. There are so many things wrong with this argument, but I guess to start, what is this idea that we are all going to become disabled from COVID? That is made up. That is not scientific. That is not rooted in actual evidence. And two, wearing a mask doesn't mean you won't get COVID. We all wore masks all the time, and we still all got COVID like 5 times. So this idea that this is a pananka that people are just choosing not to use isn't true, babe. It's not true. And it's not that we don't care about disabled people, but we're just not going to compromise our own living our lives to an unreasonable degree for extremely rare exceptions and edge cases. If I know I'm going somewhere where a person is immunocompromised, maybe I would be willing to wear a mask, but I'm not just going to start covering my face at all times in public and struggling to breathe in case I might bump into somebody with some sort of immune condition. That's not reasonable. And that doesn't mean I don't care about disabled people. They are able to get a mask and wear it whenever they want, as much as they need to do, and they are able to take a COVID vaccine that's available and they believe it will protect them. That's their right, and they are totally able, and I support their ability to do so. But ultimately, babe, at some point, your health is your responsibility, not mine. And what any of this has to do with capitalism is honestly beyond me. People having an individualistic approach to the world is not unique to capitalism. That is just fundamental human nature, and it expresses itself in different ways in all economic and political systems. Capitalism is just the one that harnesses that towards productive ends most efficiently, right? It makes your selfishness, in order to pursue your own best interest and enrichment, you've got to go provide some value to society in many cases, right? Build a company, sell a product a lot of people want, work hard, do these kinds of things. So it has nothing to do with capitalism. Even in a non-capitalist society, people still think about their own self-interest. You are detached from the reality of human nature, and it shows. And I just have to spare a word for this very style of TikTok commentary where you're just screaming at us and cussing. You know that doesn't make you more correct, right? You know that doesn't make your arguments stronger, doesn't mean you're in the right just because you put on this vibe of moral indignation. You still have to actually convince us. And just dropping F-bombs all over the place and making my job harder when I'm editing this podcast and have to bleep them out, that doesn't actually convince anyone or make us more likely to come around to your point of view. If anything, it kind of does a little bit of the opposite. It makes us a little defensive, like, whoa, you're screaming at me there, babe. So maybe just stop. Stop doing these unhinged car rants with F-bombs where you're yelling at people about how wrong everything they do is. And maybe if you want to convince us to do something, actually try to convince us. Don't just cuss us out and tell us we're evil. Or you can keep doing that, but we're going to keep ignoring you and not doing what you want. Sorry. What do you guys think? Have you encountered anyone who's still terrified and paranoid like this in the real world? Or is it just people on TikTok acting like this in 2024? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button while you're at it. Now, I am already way over time for today's episode, so I am just going to skip the comments and I'll read more of your thoughts and what you guys had to say next week. So that is it for this episode of the Bread vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button and do comment. I will read the comments on Monday, like I said. And with that, we'll talk again after the weekend.